Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Kris Kluver with us. Kris is the founder at Entrepreneurial Advisors. It's a strategic advisor there, leadership team facilitator, certified EOS, which is an interesting one in the age of AI. Uh, Facilitator, moderator at Ultra High Network Masterminds, founder at Life on Your Own Terms, Self Assured Storage, and was president and still is, I guess, at Cherokee Street Investment. Kris is an interesting guy. He lives in Leadville. I'm gonna do the race one day there, and I'm gonna crash at Kris Place. Leadville, for those that don't know, it's an ex mining town. Still has a mining facility, as Kris told me, but it's incredibly harsh there. High altitude, it's cold, and the race is probably top 10 toughest race in the world out there. So this pod should be fun. Kris, what are you up to nowadays? Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Well, first off, Charles, thank you so much, man, for having me on. I'm humbled to be here. So, I like to say, people are always saying, like, "Hey, dude, how you doing?" And for me, I like to say, I feel like I'm the luckiest cat on the planet, but I genuinely, in my heart, feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world because I live with a wife that I absolutely love, in a place that I absolutely love, getting to do work with people that I love working and helping, having an impact. So with those things in mind, I don't know. I primarily, like I said, live about 100 miles west of Denver, 10,000 feet, buried in the woods. I look out my beautiful office window and I see the two tallest peaks in Colorado right out here, 15 minutes away from the trailhead. I've had the good fortune to work with leadership teams and CEOs and leaders all around the world. Started my first of 16 companies when I was 19. I have built them, bought them, sold them, wrecked a few. Um, I've had some of the leaders that I've been able to work with. We've been able to go from entrepreneurial to near $1 billion market caps or above. Got to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange a few weeks ago with the team, and the CEO invited me up on the podium with him, which was really absolutely fucking cool. So I don't know, man. I feel like the luckiest cat on the planet.
And how did you get there? Because the road usually is full of adversity till you get to the quote unquote top.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope that I never quote unquote get to the top. I always want to be striving. To me, I'm 57, and my wife and I actually we do strategic planning every year for ourselves, for our own life, and I've been working through a process looking at what do I want my life to look like when I turn 70. So 23 years from now, and was setting those prompts that if I knew I couldn't fail, what would amazing be? But along the road, I started when I was young as an entrepreneur. And in the 80s, if you said you're going to be an entrepreneur, dude, that was like a dirty word. You were going to be pretty much ostracized from anything corporate. It was an either or path, and it was not nearly as romanticized as it is now. But I've always I had learning challenges, and I looked at things differently than a lot of people, and didn't necessarily quite fit with a lot of the other pieces. But when it comes to building businesses and working with people and leaders and being fearless and challenge, um, for some reason, I can see how to connect those dots and just crystal clear technicolor. It's the idea of working for someone that I think that scares the shit out of me. But going out and trying other things and being willing to fail is very exciting.
And don't you think that your quote unquote neurodiversity is responsible for the life you did? Did you let it roam free, or did you bring some habits that helped you control this quote unquote learning disability?
I have to say now I think of it as my greatest gifts. But, growing up in a family where my dad is an attorney and my mom was a high school principal or junior high principal, it was very linear in what they were looking at. So I have no doubt that there were certain things that I embraced and adopted to adapt and fit in with things. But it's taken me a long time to actually get to where now realizing that the way that I connect dots, the way I look at things, the way I can read and engage with my CEOs is very, very different. And it's tremendously valuable. But the way that I equate it, Charles, for anybody who's going through those things is I had a partner once in a business, and he was a brilliant guy, a really wonderful, smart, brilliant guy. And he could sell anything. He understood sales cold, great. But when it came to looking at entrepreneurial steps and the next steps that were just plain as day to me, he was dumb as a box of hammers. And so I could see the colors and all the way through and the connections, and that's how I always see things. So I assume that's how everybody else always sees things. And it was through those challenges and the side steps that happened with him that I realized that I could show somebody a picture of a rose, and if they're colorblind, they can see the rose, and they can see the texture, and they can see their version of what they're seeing. But I see it completely different. So we could be looking at the same exact thing, describing it in similar ways, but see it very differently. And that's where I ended up learning that I've really been able to excel with how I see things. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Do you feel that you have some kind of chip on your shoulder from disappointing your parents?
Wow. I did for quite a while. And the reality is they don't care, and they're proud of who I am regardless. So
There you go.
the chip on the shoulder was a self-inflicted wound rather than me picking up somebody else's brain damage. It was all self-inflicted. It was my interpretation of what they were seeing, not what they actually were seeing. So it was very.
Right. But I think what we're good at as founders is taking that negative and turning it into a positive. Have you done that with most of your adversities and challenges in life? Take a very tough challenge that's supposed to kill you, but grow stronger out of it?
Oh, I would hope so. I think so. So we were talking about doing ultras, but what I didn't tell you is that 9 years ago I had my hip and my knee replaced, and I had never done even a half marathon up to that point. And it wasn't until afterwards that my wife was doing 50-mile runs that I started running the numbers in my head, figuring out, well, son of a bitch, these bigger runs, these bigger races, they actually you slow down in your per mile. It's more about being ultra consistent. It's more about having the long-term endurance, and they're on trails, and it's a little bit easier on the joints. And I was like, oh shit, I like to say that extraordinary lives in the unreasonable. Fucking be unreasonable. So yeah, no, it ended up being a great opportunity. I remember with my hip, I bought a backpack, an ultralight backpack that I wanted because we were going to do some touring in Italy. And I put that backpack in my recovery room so I could look at it every day so that it incentivized me to get my ass out of bed and do the work that I needed. So if I could visualize it, then I would push for those other pieces.
And granted that we're all different and that you coach so many CEOs and founders, how do you actually adapt your style to the person that you're working with? One of my favorite book is The Creative Way by Rick Rubin. The guy is so chill, so zen, adapts so much and flows with the artist that he's working with. So what is your style when it comes to this? And if you can talk about EOS in the process.
So with EOS, I was early with them for quite a few years, worked with them quite a bit, but I left that community about 8 or 9 years ago. So I haven't necessarily been associated with it. I think it was a great process and great tools. A lot of it came from a variety of different pieces, whether it be Patrick Lencioni's The Advantage. It could have been Vern Harnish's Scaling Up. And I know all these guys, and they're great guys. They're great mechanics with those. So for me, when I start looking at how I choose to move forward on those, is I like the tools, I like those mechanics, but if I'm working with someone, I feel it's my obligation as a senior advisor is to absolutely be 100% present, curious, and fearless. So what I mean by that is I think the greatest gift we can give anyone, including ourselves, is to be 100% present with each other. Even if you're out screwing around, go out and screw around with abandon. If somebody's saying, well, I'm nervous about this or something about that, I think it's a matter of being curious to really try and dig to define what is the root cause, what's really there. And then I like to say, I have to show up 100% prepared every session to get fired. I don't do contracts or agreements. I'm expensive, but the people I choose to work with, if I'm not willing to show up and get fired and call you out, not as an asshole, but in a compassionate way, and say, no, you're in your own fucking way. What are you doing? Then that's on me. Then you shouldn't hire me. So I think every individual, organization, team is at one of 4 phases. It's stabilize, visualize, strategize, or execute. And it's my job to really be curious and meet them where they're at. Because if I want to talk about visualization or strategy, I can do that great. But if you're running around with your hair on fire playing whack-a-mole, it's going to go in one ear and out the other, and you're not going to listen to shit. So sometimes we may even talk about, how are you sleeping? What's keeping you up at night? How do we get you to stabilize and breathe and get a little bit of arbitrage in time? I do this a lot in my peer circle groups. But then from there, then we go to, all right, let's visualize. Most senior leaders, most people live their life in a reactionary mode, going from here to there to here to there to whatever could come along. The people who do exceptionally well are the ones that say, no, I want to go there and back. I want to figure out how to send a rocket up into space, have it come back down and catch a 22-story building. That's insane. But Musk was able to do that. Then we build the strategy. How do we do that in a simplified way? And then how do we execute with ruthless but compassion and accountability? So long-winded answer your question. To me, it's really about being curious and meeting that person where they're at. If I'm ultra present and willing to challenge and hear those things, then we can help start getting out of our own way. So does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, love language, but business application, right? A lot of founders and CEOs, their love language is just spending time with them and energy, listening to them, asking them questions, giving them the stage, right? When they give the stage so much to their employees. So great insight there. And curious about the advising aspect of it all. I'm also an advisor. Do you take equity in your startups? Is that a long-term investing strategies? Because yes, it seems like it's the funnest job in the world to advise litany of startups and get insights left and right, plug it into one algorithm and make sense out of business, but also life in the process, right? So do you take equity? What's your long-term plan with advising, and do you specialize in a specific niche?
So in certain cases, I do take equity. A lot of times I'm doing that now more and more, but I set it in the form of a SAR, which is stock appreciation right. Meaning if we start here, I only get equity provided we get here. Now I have some companies where I have stock flat out and there's comp based on those things. But traditionally, the only time I won't do it is if for some reason that seems like a competitive, or it could be something that is not in the best interest of the client. Without any doubt, I always am laser focused on how can I be of greatest service and value to that client, and how can I be leading, giving them the most value. Now, if there's something there that's competitive, that's negative, then I won't work with them. But so usually though, to be very blunt, it'll be usually a 3 to 6 month engagement before that's there. It's acknowledged in advance, but I want them to know that we're working together, that I'm changing their life, that I am challenging them and getting them to think in such a different way, on a whole different level, that they're like, oh my God, we can't imagine not having this person in our life.
Love it. And at this point, you have a couple of other ventures. Both of us share lots in common. The peer groups, the peer circles that you run. What's your thesis behind them? Yeah, I love masterminding because I get to connect with like-minded people. So there's emotional support in there. Loneliness is a big issue in the founder community, and mental health. There's insights, and yeah, I record my masterminds and I make content out of them. Why are you so bullish on peer circles?
So when it comes to the masterminds, I think people are absolutely craving some sort of environment where they can come together with people and like you say, in that trusted environment, and be able to talk about that absolutely amazing 5% that they can't talk about anybody else. Yeah, I wrote on a G5. Cool. You can't necessarily tell your neighbors or your high school buddies that. or your family sometimes. Or on the flip side, holy shit, I'm not sure I'm going to make payroll. Or maybe I was in Las Vegas on a trip and I made some really bad personal choices. Or, sometimes those things happen, but creating that environment helps. And the reality is, the old adage that it's lonely at the top is peer circles is ideal for those senior leaders who realize that they're starting to become the choke point. Because the skills it takes to get from here to here are different than the skills it takes to get from here to here. And there are times where people, whether it's imposter syndrome or genuine fear, they can't talk to their board if they're PE or VC financed. They can't necessarily talk to their leadership team. There are restrictions on who they can talk to. And when that happens, it becomes very, very counterproductive. And they end up in a doom loop in their own mental thinking instead of, no, what do we need to do to keep building on these? So in our peer circles, we've got a whole bunch of different tools, up to 7 different hours of group coaching a month, but a 3-hour peer accountability group. I've got a virtual AI twin that I've built within there. It's got all my books and content and everything that's very helpful. We've got multiple courses, a variety of different things. But to me, it's again, providing the tools to meet somebody where they're at, but empower them to achieve more than they ever dreamed.
And at this point, you yourself achieved so much. You're ambitious, but you're also fulfilled. Can both coexist? Like, what's next for you?
So I feel the whole idea, and I talk about this, and in my last book, Life on Your Terms, was about this, is I believe that work-life balance, the concept of that is bunk. I don't think it's really possible. However, I firmly believe that an intentional work-life balance is 100% possible. If we say that if we just allow either one or the other to roll, it's not going to work very well. But if we say, I want to be an endurance athlete, I want to be able to work with people around the world, I want to be able to take whatever it is, there's massive opportunities all over it. So right now I am in the process of becoming a pilot. So I want to have a plane by the end of the year, gives me new windows. My wife and I are taking a huge adventure bucket list trip here in about a week that we're really excited about, that we've been dreaming on. So I think it's, when I work with my senior leaders, I just got off a call with somebody out in the Bay Area coaching, and he's like, we were debating how to grow to $500 million. He goes, yeah, man, but I want to still be a good dad. I want to be a good husband. And I think so many CEO leaders look at that as a binary choice. It's either or. And I promise it's not, but you have to put a lot more intention into it.
Yeah, intention. Interesting. Yeah, because I would view that as some kind of wormhole, as some very precise sort of physics bugs that you can enter in and get better in both worlds. How does that physically make sense? It seems that all CEOs and founders nowadays that are really, really good, take out Alex Hormozi, for example, really good at business, but anytime this guy tries to give personal advice, it sucks, so how is that even possible?
So I think it's not only possible, I think it's actually the only way that you genuinely get there. So so as an example, if I'm working with somebody, I can sense right off the bat that they're just cooked, they're fried.
Okay.
I'm going to ask them how they're sleeping. And I've had somebody where we were going public, and the guy's like, well, what the fuck does that have to do with business? And just the way that he responded, I'm like, well, what do you think? But when we become more, if we could take care of ourselves physically, mentally, if we're well rested, if things are happy at home, the reality is we're going to make better decisions when we're at the office. We're going to have better direction. We're going to have much more clarity. Now, you can have all the money in the world, and I've worked with people literally who are billionaires, who were the most miserable bastards on the planet. Their spouses hated them. Their kids didn't like them. They didn't even like themselves. Their health was a shit show. So how successful is that person really? So to me, and people seem to think it's one or the other. Now, don't get me wrong. There's times where it's suck it up, buttercup. You got 80-hour weeks, 90-hour weeks. That's the way it is. That's what we've chosen to do. But when you put that intention around it, you can do all of those things. And the reality is over and over and over, I've seen it when people look at their life in totality in a full balance, and they focus on being a great dad and a great spouse and their health, and doing their meditation and their exercise and their stretching and whatever that is. And they're focused on managing their time, their talent, their treasure. Everything else expands. But challenge, if you disagree, I'd love to hear your perspective.
I see it as a Venn diagram of work long, hard, and smart. Jeff Bezos. If I can work smarter with AI and ChatGPT, that can replace the long and hard. What do you think?
I think they're great tools. And I think we are just barely scratching the surface. And I think I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier yesterday, where there was discussion on some of that. I think the biggest challenge and the biggest problem that needs to be solved, everybody's got this gold rush around AI as far as what AI can do. But I personally believe that it's going to be the interface on how AI can interface with us as the hairless apes that we are, because we're going to be the ones that have the hardest time getting through that. But that is nothing more than a challenge for AI to solve. So I think there's actually a workshop I teach around this, where if you think that you have the people who have the current legacy knowledge and tools and brand and resources and all this, and you think in the long run, it's theirs to win, but they need to figure out and visualize what that looks like, because it's the tools that AI is providing that connects those and how you bridge that gap. But I think that investing the time and energy now to think more about what amazing looks like and how to capitalize on those tools rather than trying to think of it in a linear way that so often we do. Does that make sense?
A lot. Your opinion with UX, fully agree. I've built various posts on that with people talking shit against ChatGPT with DeepSeek, right? The UX of ChatGPT is so good. It adapts to you, right? How you speak to it, it will speak back to you. Then there's also the new smart voice of ChatGPT, which has like no delay. So when you talk to it, it's like instant. I'm all about UX, and certainly when AGI is a thing, or even before it becomes a thing, I do believe that chat will adapt even more with our interactions with it. It's all about us. It's all about the users, right? And AI is built for us. So, yeah, fascinating perspective that you have, Kris. One last questions or comment here. Do you agree that Sir Ernest Shackleton was the best leader in history?
I believe that Sir Ernest Shackleton was the best leader in a hideous time of crisis in history. So, the fact that he got 27 men over 2 years through something that was completely not
like 100.
It was,
near 100.
Yeah, just absolutely crazy on what they did. That's so the bucket list trip we're doing is we're going back to Antarctica and we're going to go visit his grave.
Oh my God!
In South Georgia.
Oh my God! I would love to. Well, I would love to visit the spot where he crashed, but that's not. Did he crash in Antarctica? Was it like near Patagonia?
No, he was about I think almost 2,000 miles south of Patagonia, south and east, and in what's called the Weddell Sea. He was in the Weddell Sea, and his ship slowly crushed over time, like they were in the ice for 9 months before it crushed, and then it crushed, and then they had to take everything off. And so I'm rereading his memoirs in the different book right now.
It's so good. Yeah, it's the best business book ever, in my opinion. After Rick Rubin's Creative Win, my opinion, but which both are not business books, by the way. I would actually do that trip. One, it would be so nice to revive Mr. Ernest Shackleton through AI and have a conversation with this guy. But second, yes, absolutely, I want to do that trip as well. So let me know how that one goes, and I'll try to reproduce my own as soon as I can. Where can people find out more about you, Kris?
They're welcome to go to Kris with a K, K-R-I-S, Kluver with a K, Kluver.com.
That was Kris Kluver and Charles Kluver.